as I said in my paper, my main argument is that the normal nomenclatura rotation process was stopped by abolition of the system, because that rotation, that elevation of elite rotation was only possible within that system. If you smash the system, then everything goes berserk, and you can't really re-establish the normal process of re-election of the political elite. So that's one argument. The second argument is that after August 1991, right-wing part of the former regional Communist Party bureau took power with the head of Alevtina Aparina, who then became first secretary of the OBKO, of the new Russian Communist Party. And she was a very strong hardliner and a strong friend and supporter of Zyuganov. And she mobilized a lot of political forces in the Volgograd region to vote for the communist candidate in 1996. And that communist candidate, Mikhail won the election. And the previous governor, very experienced governor, Shabunin, had to step down. So starting from 1996, Alevtina Aparina was dominating the political landscape of the Volgograd region. Her main task was not to develop the region, but to show her allegiance to Zyuganov, securing her position in parliament. And she succeeded in doing that. And I was writing my PhD then I was doing my PhD for the University of Essex in the UK, and I interviewed certain people in the top of the hierarchies. For example, there was that person, Alexander, what's his name, I forgot, the head of the Kritikas-Nacheystva, Dilman, Alexander Dilman, yes. Alexander Dilman, in his interview to me, said that he was offered by Maksyuta in the late 1990s the position of the first deputy governor, первый заместитель губернатора. And Dilman said, he was a very good candidate. Dilman said, I have one precondition. Aparina is not going to give me orders whom I have to appoint to certain positions. Maksyuta said, the governor said, oh, I can't guarantee that. In other words, all the policy, all the staff policy at the regional level was determined by just one person. So the real leader of the oblast was Aparina. Until 2010, when Bravko, after 14 years of that Communist Party candidate, Governor Maksyuta, then another Governor Bravko was appointed in 2010. So that domination on the political arena of the Volgograd Oblast, of the right-wing hardliners of the former CPSU, and then they became a Communist Party of Russian Federation at the regional level, that domination actually created that erosion. The people who would have been able to occupy the top positions, they fled from Volgograd. There was a great exodus of these bright people like Dilman. Alexander Dilman, he went to Moscow. He was offered a very nice position in Moscow. And there were lots and lots of people who fled from Volgograd, who could have been occupying top positions, but because Madame Aparina wanted to control everything in the region, they left the region. And actually, that is a very important factor, in my opinion, that brought Volgograd to that stagnation, to tragedy, in fact. And that tragedy is more of a tragedy of the people rather than the tragedy of the rotting industry. That's my view.
Thank you.
Can I try to say, yeah. You know,
if you look on the, Pavel demonstrated very interesting picture, the difference between 1990s and the period of the late 90s and 2000s. And I would say that the main events, I would say the main changes took place in the 1990s. It was still the, what was most interesting in the 1990s looked like a popular movement and lack or presence of the democratization in the region. But in the 2000s, we start to see the changes in the local regional elites with a big interference from the central authorities, especially if you look, Mikhail mentioned one key figure in the regional politics, Alipkin Aparina, the regional communist leader. There was another important person in the regional politics at that time, was the head of the investigation committee of the Volgograd region, Mikhail Muzraev, who played an extremely important role in the punishment of the regional elites. Around the year 2007, I think, plus or minus 1 or 2 years, he managed to arrest and put in jail such people as the mayor of the city of Volgograd, vice governor of the region, head of the regional FEM, I would say, it's regional committee on the extraordinary situations, all of the generals. The head of the Volgograd regional police or Department of Internal Affairs, the head of the regional transportation police, so it was like during several years, many key figures on the regional elites were just arrested and sent to jail. And that was a big blow. I mean, that since that time, the regional elite felt, I was scared by this development. And Muzraev emerged as a major player, like a more shadow type player in the region, and until recently. And what is interesting that several of the disciples of Mikhail Muzraev, several young investigators, made a big career. They were made a big career in Moscow, and we've heard of them in the second Khodorkovsky trial and in some big investigation initiated by Bastrykin and the investigative committee, all of them with a big political implications. So Volgograd was a kind of the breeding ground for this use of the investigative committee as a political tool until recently, because Muzraev was arrested earlier this year, and that was demonstrated some change in the regional politics, and we will see. But to my view, that's exactly the illustration to what Pavel had say about the punishment from the region, from the central authorities, punishment of the regional elites. So that was just direct example of that punishment. Unfortunately, I cannot answer your second question about the Crimean consensus. I do not know how much Volgograd moods has changed since recently. Yeah, I can feel that the Crimean consensus is fading away everywhere, but I have no special figures or examples, proofs from Volgograd for this.
Okay. Yes, please in the back.
I have a question. Very nice to meet you face to face. My name is Yuri Rashkin. I'm from University of Wisconsin in Whitewater, and I'm also host of Rashkin Report. So my question is, this is a beautiful example of another city in Russia that falls apart. Is it possible to go the other way and create a city in Russia that functions, or is it going to be crushed from the central authorities no matter what?
Well, it's hard for me to come up with an example of a different story, but we can see that any big city, city with a population of more than 1 million, actually more or less can be considered successful. I think people in, maybe Omsk is another example of a bad situation, but cities like Ekaterinburg or Novosibirsk or Nizhny Novgorod or even Krasnoyarsk, with all the problems they have, they still do not demonstrate, at least according to this ranking from the financial university of the Russian government, the ranking demonstrate that the people there do not feel so upset as people in Volgograd, and that means that those cities somehow overcame the initial problems with the reforms of the 90s, economic sufferings of back of the 1990s. So there are other examples, and probably one of the goals of our, or maybe one of the things we need to do during this project is to find the comparative cases and try to compare Volgograd with other cities of similar population and economic political structures probably. So, well, I do not know if I can answer you. Okay, maybe it's, yeah, that's it.
I don't know that there is an answer, you know.
Yes,
but
it's a kind of deliberation.
So just
Yes.
would add to what Ivan Ivanovich has said. It's exactly the reason why Volgograd we regard as a sort of a model case. Unfortunately, in one way or the other, this destiny is for all Russian Federation, consequently all Russian cities, with some exceptions, of course. And those exceptions are caused by either personalities of their heads or some other factors of that kind. For example, St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg is the home city of president and all that bureaucratic elite which is now in power in Russia. Obviously, St. Petersburg is rolling in money. Of course, 1/3 of it has probably been stolen all the time. If you look at the facades, they're marvelous. And facades, they're marvelous.
I was just there. That was not my impression.
But if you go inside, I mean, from the into the courtyards, you'll see the horror of the Dostoevsky's Petersburg, etc.
It's even worse on the inside.
Yes. Well, there are some more successful examples in Siberia. Kazan is exactly Kazan. Well, it's oil.
And
also
national ethnic.
Yes, Kazan. Yeah,
Okay.
Kazan is a separate case. When Mikhail was president, and by the way, he was the former first secretary of the Kazan Communist Party Committee, so he transferred from that position onto the position of the president of Kazan. He used that Chechen problem to blackmail Yeltsin, and he managed to establish for the Kazan region, or the Kazan Republic, Tatarstan, yes, of course, Tatarstan, absolutely exclusive conditions. So then they didn't pay into the federal budget as much as other regions used to pay. For example, it paid only roughly 20% of their revenue, whereas other regions, including Volgograd, the Volgograd region, they would be paying up to 45-50. Now, the proportion of what the so-called donator regions pay to the federal budget is up to 70% of the annual revenue. And of course, the Volgograd case is absolutely significant, and it speaks for itself, because traditionally it's a heavy industry. And of course, with the new economic order, that heavy industry was unprofitable, became unprofitable, and etc., etc. So the answer is, in one way or the other, these problems are experienced in all cities. But in Volgograd, they are in a very concentrated form, as I say, as though we are looking at them through a magnifying glass.
So either consistent ethnic population or natural resources
Yes.
can result in a different outcome.
Everything in Russia depends on power, depends on political relations. If it is not the resources, it's the connections in Moscow.
Sure.
It's either the one or the other. It's either the natural resource or the power resource. That's it.
Thank you.